In a shocking display of cruelty, humans brutally enslaved the telepathic Iridian aliens on planet Zephyrus 6. The Iridians toiled in the mining colony under the merciless watch of their human overseers, enduring unspeakable hardships. But everything changed when Dylan Perry, an interstellar command officer, arrived to investigate rumors of their mistreatment. Dylan walked through the harsh mining site, his eyes widening at the sight of the abused and broken Iridians. Their pain and suffering were etched on their faces, a testament to the depths of human depravity. As he grappled with the moral failure of his own species, a young Iridian named Jackson reached out to him telepathically, sharing glimpses of the horrors they endured. The truth hit Dylan like a punch to the gut. The Iridians weren't just mistreated, they were brutally exploited by a rogue human faction led by the ruthless commander Zane Riker. Riker sought to harness their telepathic abilities for his own gain, using them as pawns in a bid for power and wealth. The rogue faction operated outside Earth's laws and the fragile alliance with the Thousand Species, threatening to plunge the galaxy into chaos. Dylan knew he had to act fast, but standing in his way was his corrupt superior, Captain Aria Voss, secretly in league with Riker. Dylan faced an impossible choice: turn a blind eye and follow orders, or risk everything to expose the truth and free the enslaved Iridians. The fate of humanity and the Thousand Species hung in the balance as Dylan grappled with the weight of his decision. Time was running out. The shocking revelation of the Iridians' enslavement threatened to unravel the delicate peace between humans and the Thousand Species. Dylan had to act now, or watch as the galaxy descended into war and chaos. He steeled himself for the battle ahead, knowing that the future of all sentient life depended on his next move. Dylan's heart raced as he sat in a dimly lit room with Lieutenant Marcus Reeves and a handful of other trusted officers. The weight of his findings hung heavy in the air as he shared the horrifying truth about the enslaved Iridians and the rogue faction's illegal activities on Zephyrus 6. "We can't let this continue," Dylan said, his voice filled with persistence. "We have to act now, before it's too late." Marcus leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What's the plan? How do we take down Riker and his loyalists without alerting Captain Voss?" Dylan laid out a rough sketch of the mining colony, pointing to key locations. "We'll need to gather more intel on the layout, security measures, and Riker's leadership. I've got contacts in Interstellar Command who might be able to help, but we have to be careful. One wrong move and we'll blow the whole operation." The group nodded in agreement, their faces set with grim drive. They knew the risks, but the thought of leaving the Iridians to suffer was unthinkable. As the meeting adjourned, Dylan reached out to Jackson telepathically. "We're coming for you," he promised. "Spread the word among your people. Be ready to act when the time comes." Jackson's response was a flicker of hope amidst a sea of despair. "We will be ready. Thank you, Dylan Perry. You give us reason to believe in humanity again." Over the next few days, Dylan and his team worked tirelessly to prepare for the rescue. They scoured the black market for weapons and equipment, careful to cover their tracks. They studied the mining colony's defenses, looking for weaknesses to exploit. But as they planned, a sense of unease grew within Dylan. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that Riker was closing in on them. His fears were confirmed when he received a cryptic message from an unknown sender within Interstellar Command. The words Project Prometheus leapt out at him, a chilling revelation of a conspiracy that threatened to unravel the very fabric of the alliance between humans and the Thousand Species. Dylan's hand trembled as he read the message again, the weight of his mission pressing down on him like a physical force. He knew that the fate of the Iridians, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on his shoulders. As he looked out at the harsh landscape of Zephyrus 6, Dylan steeled himself for the battle ahead. He knew that the path before him was fraught with danger, that every step could be his last. But he also knew that he could not turn back, not when so much was at stake. With a final nod to his team, Dylan set his jaw and stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The rescue of the Iridians had begun, and there would be no turning back until justice was served and the truth was brought to light. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of deep orange and red, Dylan and his team made their move. They crept through the shadows of the mining colony, their footsteps muffled by the soft, rust-colored sand that covered the ground. The air was thick with tension, and the only sound was the distant hum of machinery and the occasional crackle of a radio. Jackson's telepathic presence was a constant comfort in Dylan's mind, guiding him and the others towards the enslaved Iridians. They moved swiftly and silently, taking out the rogue faction's security forces with precise, coordinated strikes. The guards crumpled to the ground, their weapons clattering on the metal walkways. Marcus Reeves took point, his eyes scanning the area for any signs of trouble. He signaled to Dylan, pointing towards a large, reinforced door that led to the heart of the mining operation. Dylan nodded, his heart made as he moved forward, his weapon at the ready. Inside, the Iridians looked up at their rescuers with a mix of hope and fear in their eyes. Their bodies were thin and battered, their skin pale from lack of sunlight. Dylan's heart ached at the sight of their suffering, but he pushed his emotions aside, focusing on the task at hand. "We're here to get you out," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "Follow us and stay close." As the Iridians began to move, a sudden burst of gunfire erupted from the far end of the room. Commander Riker's loyalists had discovered them, and they were determined to stop the rescue at any cost. Dylan and his team responded with a hail of bullets, diving for cover behind the heavy mining equipment. The firefight was intense, the air thick with the smell of gunpowder and the deafening roar of weapons. Dylan caught a glimpse of Captain Arya Voss amidst the chaos, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. He called out to her, trying to make her see reason. "Voss, this is wrong and you know it. Help us end this before it's too late." For a moment, Voss hesitated, her gun lowering slightly. Dylan saw the doubt in her eyes, the flicker of conscience that he had hoped to appeal to. But before she could make a decision, a stray bullet struck the ground near her feet, and she disappeared back into the fray. Just as the tide seemed to be turning in their favor, Jackson's urgent voice filled Dylan's mind. "Riker has activated a self-destruct sequence. We must hurry, or we'll all be lost." Dylan's heart raced as he redoubled his efforts, urging the Iridians and his team towards the exit. They fought their way through the remaining resistance, the ground shaking beneath their feet as the colony began to tear itself apart. In the final moments, they burst out into the open air, rushing towards the stolen transport ship that Marcus had secured. The Iridians clambered aboard, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and disbelief as they realized that they were finally free. Dylan and the last few stragglers leapt onto the ship, just as a series of explosions ripped through the mining colony behind them. The force of the blast knocked them off their feet, but Marcus held the ship steady, guiding them up and away from the destruction below. As Zephyrus 6 receded in the view screen, the Iridians and their human liberators could only stare in stunned silence. The weight of what they had just accomplished began to sink in, along with the realization that their journey was just getting started. Tensions ran high on the cramped transport, the Iridians' trauma and distrust palpable in the recycled air. Dylan and his team did their best to give them space, understanding the enormity of what they had endured. Jackson worked to bridge the gap, sharing his experiences and vouching for the humans' intentions. News of their daring rescue began to spread, sparking a firestorm of controversy and debate. Some praised Dylan and his team as heroes, while others condemned their actions as reckless and destabilizing. The delicate balance between humans and the thousand species teetered on the brink, threatening to plunge the galaxy into chaos. Amidst the turmoil, a glimmer of hope arrived in the form of an encrypted message from the mysterious figure known as Ghost. The information it contained hinted at a wider conspiracy, a network of allies ready to support their cause. Dylan knew that this was only the beginning and that the fight to unravel the secrets of Project Prometheus would test them all in ways they had never been tested before. But for now, as the transport ship carried them through the inky void of space, Dylan allowed himself a moment of respite. They had struck a blow against injustice today, and though the road ahead was uncertain, they would face it together, united in their commitment to see justice done. The transport ship glided through the inky void, its hull pockmarked with scorch marks from their narrow escape. Dylan stood at the viewport, watching as a misshapen chunk of rock grew larger in the distance. The asteroid outpost loomed before them, a collection of domed structures clinging to the barren surface. "Initiating docking procedures," Marcus announced from the pilot's seat. The ship shuddered as it aligned with the airlock, and a dull thunk echoed through the hull as they made contact. Dylan turned to face the Iridians huddled in the cargo hold. "We're here. This place will be safe for now." Jackson's telepathic voice filled his mind. "They are uncertain, afraid. The memory of human cruelty lingers." As the airlock cycled open, Dylan led the way into the abandoned research facility. Stale air and darkness greeted them. Emergency power flickered to life, casting long shadows across dusty corridors and empty labs. "Let's get everyone settled," Dylan said to his team. "We need to regroup and plan our next move." Over the following days, an uneasy tension settled over the outpost. The Iridians kept to themselves, clustering in the living quarters furthest from the humans. Dylan caught glimpses of distrustful glares and whispered conversations that fell silent as he approached. One evening, as Dylan made his way to the mess hall, a Iridian bumped into him roughly. The alien's eyes flashed with anger, and he spat something in his native tongue before stalking away. Jackson appeared at Dylan's side. He said unpleasant things. "Many still see humans only as oppressors." Dylan sighed. "We need to change that. Can you help me arrange a meeting with some of your people? A cultural exchange, maybe?" Jackson nodded. "I will try." The next day, Dylan and a handful of his officers sat across from a group of Iridians in the station's conference room. The atmosphere was tense, but as they began to share stories and customs, a fragile bridge began to form. An elderly Iridian named Arlia spoke, her voice wavering. "You freed us, yes, but how can we trust that you are different from those who enslaved us?" Before Dylan could respond, the room's comm system crackled to life. "Incoming transmission, encrypted channel," Marcus's voice announced. Dylan excused himself and hurried to the communications hub. As he decrypted the message, his eyes widened. The screen filled with images, documents, and data streams, evidence of a vast conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of Earth's government. "Project Prometheus. Operation Maelstrom," Dylan muttered, scrolling through the files. "This goes deeper than we ever imagined." He gathered his team and the Iridian leaders, laying out the grim reality before them. "We've uncovered a network of corruption that threatens everything, human and alien alike. We need to expose this, but we can't do it alone." Arlia's eyes narrowed. "Why should we risk ourselves for your human problems?" Dylan took a deep breath. "Because this affects all of us. The exploitation, the trafficking of alien technologies, it's all part of a larger plot that could tear apart the alliance between humans and the thousand species." Jackson stepped forward. "There is a way to prove your sincerity, the mind link ritual. It would allow us to see your true intentions." A hush fell over the room. Dylan knew the gravity of what was being proposed. To open his mind completely to the Iridians, to bare his very soul. "I'll do it," Dylan said firmly. "Whatever it takes to earn your trust." Hours later, Dylan sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by Iridian elders. Jackson and Arlia placed their hands on his temples, and the world fell away. Memories, emotions, and thoughts flowed between them like a river. Dylan felt the Iridians' pain, their fear, their hope, and they, in turn, saw the depth of his commitment to justice. When it was over, Dylan opened his eyes to find Arlia regarding him with newfound respect. "We have misjudged you, Dylan Perry. Your heart is true. We will stand with you." With the alliance forged, they began to plan their next move. Earth's capital would be heavily guarded, the corrupt officials deeply entrenched, but they had to try. As Dylan pored over schematics and security protocols, a priority alert flashed on the main screen. His blood ran cold as he read the message. "Riker's alive," he announced to the room, "and he's coming for us." Us. Dylan's words hung in the air, heavy with implications. The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. Marcus was the first to speak. How? We saw the colony explode. Apparently he had an escape plan, Dylan replied, his expression resolute. And now he's tracking us. Arlia's eyes narrowed. Then we must move quickly. Earth cannot wait. Dylan nodded, purpose etched on his face. Agreed. We leave in an hour. Everyone, prepare for departure. As the group dispersed, Dylan pulled Jackson aside. I need you to keep an eye on the Iridians. If Riker attacks, they'll be vulnerable. Jackson's telepathic voice resonated with understanding. I will protect them with my life, Dylan. The next few days passed in a blur of hyperspace jumps and tense silence. Earth loomed large in the view screen, a blue marble suspended in the void. Dylan stood at the helm, his heart racing as they began their final approach. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Marcus's voice crackled over the intercom. Multiple bogies incoming. It's Riker. Before Dylan could react, the ship rocked violently. Sparks erupted from control panels as Riker's forces opened fire. Through the chaos, Dylan saw a larger vessel moving into position alongside them. They're going to board us, Lieutenant Reeves shouted, drawing his weapon. Dylan turned to Jackson. Get the Iridians to the escape pods. We'll hold them off. As Jackson ushered the aliens to safety, Dylan and his team took up defensive positions. The airlock hissed open, and Riker's soldiers poured in, weapons blazing. The firefight was intense and brutal. Dylan ducked behind a bulkhead, returning fire as best he could. He saw Reeves go down, a blast catching him in the shoulder. Arlia, who had refused to leave with the others, used her knowledge of the ship's systems to trigger emergency force fields, buying them precious seconds. But it wasn't enough. Riker's forces overwhelmed them with sheer numbers. Dylan watched in horror as Reeves and Arlia were dragged away, Riker himself stepping into view. It's over, Perry, Riker sneered. Give me the evidence or I'll execute them right here. Dylan's mind raced. Everything they had fought for, all the lives at stake, it all came down to this moment. He looked at Reeves, his friend and comrade, then at Arlia, who had placed her trust in him despite everything. Jackson's voice echoed in his mind. Dylan, I sense his desperation. He will do it. With a heavy heart, Dylan made his choice. All right, Riker, you win. I'll give you the evidence. As Dylan moved to retrieve the data, a blinding flash filled the ship. Alarms blared anew as unknown vessels decloaked around them, opening fire on Riker's forces. In the confusion, Reeves and Arlia broke free. Riker, panicked, grabbed for the evidence. Dylan lunged to stop him, but Riker was faster. With the data in hand, he retreated to his ship, leaving chaos in his wake. As the dust settled, Dylan surveyed the damage. Their mission, seemingly in tatters. The evidence, gone. And the fragile alliance between humans and Iridians strained to its breaking point. Jackson approached, his eyes filled with concern. What now, Dylan? Dylan looked out at the stars, Earth still visible in the distance. Their fight was just the beginning, but the path forward had never been less clear.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.